Sir, do you want to hit or stay? I don't know. Hit, stay, hit. You busted out, sir. The house wins. Why are steak and rain bet ads everywhere now? Every time I open up social media and I see what I think is a funny video or a cool idea, I'm immediately hit with a rain bet ad. Do you understand why it's everywhere? I mean, come on, you gotta be living under a rock if you don't understand that these companies are paying influencers to promote their sites. Now, the internet is not new to promoting gambling sites through content creation and influencers, but seeing it all over my For You page on Instagram and or TikTok, it is quite concerning. What do you mean by concerning, you may ask? Well, if you want to know about the dangers of gambling, how about I tell you a little personal story of mine that I never really shared with anyone because I didn't want them to think I was crazy. And back about 2 years back when I was working my retail job, I had a bunch of coworkers talk about sports constantly. And what they would talk about afterwards is how much money they would put on their parlays, or how much money they would be making on their parlays. And I thought, parlay? What did you say? I was quite intrigued by the term parlay. It sounded like a pretty word. I had no idea what it meant, but it sounded like my coworkers were making some good money off of it. And you know me, I used my big old ears to listen over to what they were saying. I wanted to know how to make money quick and fast, because it wasn't working at this retail job, I tell you. And they would huddle around their campfire and mutter their language. They would say, parlays. I just used my bonus bet. Are you using? Which site are you using? I have 3 on my phone. I made it sound like they were goblins, but they actually had themselves under control. When I got into the gambling scene, I was the actual goblin. Yeah, I started off easy. You know, these gambling sites, they give you a bunch of free money at first so you can get a little bit of a taste of success. What happened to me was probably the worst thing that could have happened. I ended up winning. And you're sitting there thinking, winning? Isn't that a good thing? No! After winning, I got an adrenaline rush. I was just like, man, I am awfully good at this for my first time. And it was for a sport that I'd never even watched. It was for basketball. I'm not a basketball watcher. What if I put money on stuff that I actually watched? And that led me down a little spiral, losing all the free money that had been given to me. And I had no actual intention for putting my own money down into this app. You know, hearing my coworkers talk about how much money they won, I thought it would be a good idea to, make some nice money. And I also wanted a way to connect with my coworkers a little bit more. They had a group chat, and me being me, I always wanted to be a part of everything. So I decided I want to be a part of this group chat. And to get into this group chat, I couldn't be making small bets. I had to make long parlays. I had to make some good bets to make me qualified to be a gambling addict. So running through that qualification process, I actually made some good money while betting on the UFC. It was very entertaining to see myself grow as a young gambling addict. I would make money and I was happy about it. I'd post my successes and I would tell myself, yeah, actually, I'm not a gambling addict. I'm very good at gambling and I make the right choices. But as much success one can get from gambling, statistically, you cannot win every time. I know, that's hard to hear. My losing streak was inevitable, but in my mind, I was a top tier gambler. I was smart. I knew the UFC fighters. I knew who was gonna win. It's easy to predict that. Around this time, there was a big soccer tournament going on. I don't think it was the World Cup. It might have been the Copa America. It might have been something else. I honestly cannot remember. But what I do remember is losing money quick and fast. I would follow a parlay, maybe my friend put in the chat, lose that. And then after I lost that, I put more money down because I want to make the money that I just lost back, because then I'd be even. And that's better than not losing any money at all. Does anybody understand this logic? But to double down and lose again is a gut-wrenching experience, and the only thing I could do at this point was turn off the app and then turn it back on and put more money down on something that I had no business putting money down on. And I put money down on tennis, something that I have no knowledge of whatsoever. And I thought the parlay would end like maybe in an hour, but the next day came in and it took a while, and I realized, are tennis games played on different days? And then I thought to myself, wow, I put money on something I didn't even know the rules of, let alone the players. This is embarrassing. I need to delete this app. And if you're sitting there thinking, whoa, thank God he deleted the app. No, I didn't delete the app, unfortunately. It actually took me a little bit longer to get to that consensus that I need to stop gambling. I couldn't tell you the last day I stopped gambling consistently, at least, but it definitely fizzled out from that tennis experience. This is a story I just haven't told anyone because I feel like it's so embarrassing. It's like living in a town and there's just a giant hole in the center of the town, and it's quite avoidable. There's like signs everywhere telling you not to go into the hole, but every year there's at least like a bunch of people that do it anyways, besides like heeding the warnings. Your parents are constantly reminding you to just not jump into the hole because it's a bad idea. And you meet them with just like a sigh of annoyance, like, why would I even do that? That's so stupid. How could I fall into that hole? I know other people do it, but I'm different. How could I do it? But then you decide to do it, and then you realize, wow, now I'm in a hole. And if you feel like that anecdote was long, drawn out, or even lazy, well, shut up! I know it was. I think you understand what I'm trying to get at here. And I'm not here to tell you shouldn't gamble. I'm not your mother, I'm not your father, I'm not even one of your close friends. But you gotta understand, nowadays kids are gambling. It's kinda crazy. You know, one time I was substituting at a high school and I overheard the kids talking about a soccer game. What I found very interesting about their conversation is how much they mentioned the terms betting and gambling. I even overheard one of his classmates tell him that they should ask the substitute teacher how much they should put on the team. And you know, high schoolers, they'll just do anything somebody else tells them to do because it's funny. So then he asked me, because you know it's funny, right? But then I talked to him seriously and I asked him, are you actually gambling like on an app, or is it just between your friends? And then he shows me the app, which is the same one that I used a bunch. Then he responds with, you know, this is my dad's account. I just used his ID. It's a whole nother bag of worms to unpack, right? The bag of worms being kids doing stuff without their parents' knowledge on the internet. And as much as I wanted to tell this kid about the negative effects of gambling, I feel as if telling him that right now would only push him farther into the hole. Get to the point! Yeah, I understand. What am I getting at right now? What I'm trying to say, if this one kid is able to do it, then I'm sure countless kids around the country are able to gamble on these sites without their parents' knowledge. And you know what is getting these kids into gambling? I believe that there's a couple of factors to it. Gambling nowadays surrounds us everywhere. Whether that's loot boxes in video games or trading cards, it surrounds us constantly. I personally think those stake and rainbet ads do not help. Now, I don't want to blame the people that end up taking the ads and putting them in their videos, because I'm sure they pay you good money, and any money can help, especially nowadays. I want to say be conscious of what you put out there, because most of the time the people that have these ads are making really funny and entertaining content. But I digress, and here's another funny story. When I was in kindergarten, all my friends were playing Pokemon and they had their decks and they were battling each other, and I was just, oh my god, I was amazed. My friend let me play with his cards and I was hooked onto it. He said, next time you can play with your cards, and I told him, yeah, of course, I'll bring my cards next time. I have some. And I lied, I didn't have any. So I forced my mom to come with me to Target to buy some Pokemon cards. And this was like a one-off thing. My mom was never doing this again, but I had to prove I wasn't lying. So I went, I bought the Pokemon cards, I opened the pack, and after I opened the pack, I looked at the cards, and right in front of me were just a bunch of meaningless cards. I stared at the cards and I felt a sinking in my heart. I felt weird. I felt sad looking at the cards. I thought something cooler would happen. I thought a more enlightening experience was to come. That technically was my first experience was gambling, and I felt bad after it, and I just didn't know why. You might be thinking, Pokemon cards, that's not gambling, that's an investment. I'm a scalper, I steal all the cards from the kids nowadays. You might be thinking Pokemon isn't a form of gambling, but I beg to differ. When 2020 came around, I bought those ETBs like it was no tomorrow. Every time I would get paid from that pizza place I used to work at, I would either spend my money on Dragonstones and Dokkan, or Pokemon ETBs. At this point, I had to stop buying ETBs. They were like $50 each, and I was wasting majority of my paycheck buying Pokemon cards. So, I started to stop buying them. I haven't bought an ETB since like around 2020, 2021, but in came another form of gambling. I started gambling with the stock market. GameStop has just blown up in stocks and making people millionaires, and some folks were speculating that AMC was to do the same. And I saw that, I hopped on the train and I rode it. I rode it all the way up. And my 200 turned into 2,000, and that's honestly a good amount of money to make. I held the bag like a fool. I didn't want 2,000, I wanted 2 million. I wanted to be a millionaire. And you know what happened? The stock fell. No! But there was people predicting. They're like, oh no, it's just a small drop. It's gonna skyrocket again. We're gonna be millionaires. And guess what? I listened to them. So unfortunately, that 200 only ended up turning into 900, which is still a good profit in my opinion. But if I decided to sell it at the peak instead of waiting to become a millionaire, I would have doubled my profits and saved myself a little bit of stress and anxiety. I feel like telling these stories gives you a clear perspective of how badly gambling has affected my life. But circling back to the topic in the beginning, whether it's stake, rainbet, loot boxes, TCG, casinos, anything, Gambling's always going to surround us. Nowadays, it's gotten so bad that you can't even doom scroll freely without running into 5 or 10 different content creators jamming in Rainbet or Stake in between their videos. And in my opinion, I don't think this is going to get better. It's only going to get worse. I mean, why would it get better? You think the corporations are going to have a change of heart? No, they're going to keep jamming Rainbet and Stake down your face! I want to end this video by reiterating a sentiment that I had in the middle of the video. It's just a message to content creators. Majority of you guys have funny ideas and you're creating entertaining content. I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys to turn down any money, because if you need the money and if you just want the money to indulge in yourself, do it, right? All I want to say is just be conscious of what you're putting out there. You may think your impact is very minimal, but you never know the effects of what it could cause. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. For everybody who watched the whole video, if it's just my friends, I love my friends. Thank you so much for watching this. This is very fun to create.